This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
All right, folks, welcome into this Friday, January 29th edition of Rhode Island's podcast of record, B-Town. It's Bill Bartholomew with you, as I'll be every Tuesday and Friday. Follow me on Twitter at Bill Bartholomew, and be sure to join the Bartholomew Town Podcast Facebook group and follow on Instagram at Bartholomew Town for daily digital content, including breaking news and analysis of what's going on here in the Ocean State. Okay, today, a conversation with someone who hasn't been on the pod since, I think it was, 2019, when I went to Central Falls City Hall and had a chat with then CF Mayor James Diossa. And he's someone, I mean, let's be honest about it. When you look at Rhode Island politics, the assumption was Diossa's term would end in 2020, and he was someone who was often mentioned as a potential lieutenant governor candidate for 2022. A lot of the questions were, and I think it's a similar thing for former Cranston Mayor Alan Fung, what do you do to bridge the 2 years between the end of your mayoral term and a potential opportunity to seek statewide office, right? Well, lo and behold, Governor Raimondo is on her way to D.C., most likely is going to be confirmed as Commerce Secretary in the Biden administration. Dan McKee, Lieutenant Governor, will rise to become Governor of Rhode Island, and James Diossa, his name sits atop the list of most likely to be appointed Lieutenant Governor here in the Ocean State. However, as of right now, no specific movement on that, and you'll hear James elaborate on where that all stands in this episode. But more than anything, frankly, the purpose for this interview when we originally booked it, I think we scheduled it back in December, was to sort of recap the work that James has done and his team has done, the people around him have done in Central Falls over the better part of the last decade to take that municipality to a whole new level in a number of different areas. Now, you can't think COVID-19 in Rhode Island without thinking about Central Falls. It highlighted so much of the disparity and lack of access to certain elements of our healthcare and general infrastructure that exist that many of us have known about, many of us called for attention to detail on, but now the general public can no longer ignore. And in spite of those challenges, I think James Diossa did an outstanding job, along with his team, of navigating what could have easily turned into, frankly, a humanitarian crisis unlike any other element of COVID-19 in the state or, frankly, even in the region. So we get into that. We get into the details of the comeback city, Central Falls here in Rhode Island, and it's an important story. It really is an important discussion on a statewide basis, so I think you'll enjoy it. Now, folks, as you know, Governor Raimondo on her way to D.C., incoming Governor Dan McKee, building his transition team, trying to figure out the moves, if you will, for how to navigate vaccinations, general COVID-19 management, and a whole host of other challenges. Should teachers be vaccinated sooner than, say, other groups? McKee believes yes, while Raimondo believed no, teachers should not be prioritized in those first batch of vaccine recipients. So there's a lot of nuance that's going to play itself out. We're going to be on top of it on a daily basis, of course, and also inside the press conferences, as we've been for over 120 of them since COVID-19 first began here in the Ocean State. So again, follow on social media at Bill Bartholomew on Twitter, inside the Bartholomew Town Podcast Facebook group, and at Bartholomew Town on Instagram. Those are going to be the best places for you to kind of keep up on a daily basis for what's going on in terms of not only COVID, but just generally in terms of Rhode Island news. And we ask a lot of questions, we as in me, inside that room, trying to look at things from a different angle. You know, and again, look, some people are going to say, well, you got the mainstream or the big box media, you know, they have one agenda, and then there's the independents that have a different agenda. There's no agenda taking place. And don't let any talk hosts or, you know, other cynical characters tell you otherwise. The agenda on a daily basis is to have questions of the general public answered and to dig a little bit deeper into the process, the thought process, the mechanics behind those decisions that are being made. So that's why I'm in the room, and I believe that's why every other journalist that's inside the Veterans Memorial Auditorium for the weekly COVID-19 briefing is there. But you can tune into that again on social media, and we're going to explore these questions throughout the course of the year here on B-Town. I've got a lot of new ideas for the podcast, some different formats that we're going to test out. We're going to be offering more opinion and analysis. We're going to have some roundtable discussions, and we're going to be expanding out to the national and even global scope of things to provide more perspective. And I think we're ready to do that here. 270 episodes in, I think we're ready to expand out. And who knows, maybe we'll even be down in D.C. sooner than later to have some interviews that'll take place there. But subscribe wherever you're listening right now, Apple or Spotify. That's the best way to get notifications when a new podcast drops. And I'll be with you every Tuesday and Friday, of course. Okay, let's get to it. Outgoing Central Falls Mayor James Diossa. What was it like to be mayor of the comeback city, particularly navigating COVID-19? And is he going to be the next lieutenant governor of Rhode Island? Here on B-Town. I wrote an article like a year ago that was sort of saying, all right, here are the people who might be the leading lieutenant gubernatorial candidates in 2022. You were number one on that list at that time. Now here we are. We find ourselves with Lieutenant Governor McKee, very likely to become the 76th governor of Rhode Island. And once again, not surprisingly, your name is right there on the top of the list of folks who would be considered for an appointment to lieutenant governor. So I guess right out of the gate, what's the latest on that? It's known that you've spoken to Lieutenant Governor McKee. Any update on where that stands right now?
Look, I've anytime your name's mentioned for any higher post, it gives you a moment to feel thankful for the acknowledgement of the work that you've done and your contributions. And Dan McKee and I have been working for over 8 years, and we've had long conversations about ideas. We're both mayors at heart, and my interest is making sure that Rhode Island continues growing and getting stronger and better. And I'm always available to help in making that a reality. So, like I told you, these last few days I've been working on just closing out some of the stuff that I consider open items from my mayoral days. Nothing to do with the city, but just my emails and all that. Transferring some of my phone numbers from my work phone to my personal phone. And the exciting thing that I've been working on that I'm hoping to announce later this week or next week is that I'm creating a little foundation that will focus on the next generation of leaders, helping them with leadership skills, access to information and things that I think will help them grow as a person and make them possibly interested in getting into politics. And so I'll be announcing that fairly soon, and that's going to keep me connected to Central Falls and my passion that's always lived, and been honestly very thankful with the city for everything it's done for me and my family.
Yeah. I guess it remains to be seen then what happens with any potential future post at the state level, but time will tell. It looks like it's going to be a while before confirmation anyway. It's not like it's next week that the shift is going to take place.
Correct. And I know that whoever Dan McKee picks, it'll be with the right intentions, and I know that that Dan will do an excellent job as governor. And again, he's a mayor at heart, so he knows how all the things work and how important it is to understand detail and how we can work from the bottom up.
Yeah,
all very positive.
All 39 cities and towns, that's been his big thing, and it'll certainly pay off when you think about it. Not that it just be a different approach than Governor Raimondo, who frankly just came from and floats in a different world, so to speak, than someone who's served at the municipal level. So it'll be fascinating. All right, let's talk about the comeback city, Central Falls, and the work that you've done over the last 8 years. It's significant. There's no question about it. And there's optics and there's ways of just sort of surface level evaluating Central Falls. Obviously, you can get into the details, but everything from community policing to, frankly, places to play soccer, and everything in between has really transformed under your leadership. That's a great credit to you and also the people that you've put around you and the people who have sort of bought into that notion that, hey, Central Falls is going to move forward and it's going to move forward now. Looking back, what are some of the big, I guess, bullet points that you'd like to share about your time as mayor and specifically the accomplishments of just moving optically and practically Central Falls forward?
Bill, we had hit rock bottom when we took over, and it was a long process. You can read about it. It was a city that literally it could have, I'm trying to reflect to that first day when I walked into that office as mayor, and I knew that there needed to be a huge undertaking. But again, we had hit rock bottom, so we had to rebuild completely. And I was very young. I was 27. I didn't have a lot of experience, so for me, it was important to build a team that can balance out the lack of experience. And one of the things that I was very proud of is, I was very intentional about hiring people from within the city, and people from all walks of life that grew up in the city, and that to me gave the energy needed for this vision of these 5 pillars that I set out to accomplish, to rebuild. People want to live in a safe and clean community. We address those issues. They want a fun place. We revamped events, infrastructure, financials. We worked hard on that, and being able to accomplish that within the 8 years is a testament to the team that was there. And there were great days and there were low days, but that love for Central Falls was what kept us afloat. People would say to us when I was like, I'd love to have a higher institution in Central Falls. And we knocked on a lot of doors. And luckily for us, Rhode Island College answered the call. And that's why I am deeply, deeply appreciative of Dr. Sanchez, because he didn't say no. He explored it. He liked it. He saw what the possibilities Rick could have in Central Falls. And now we have a hub. That's what they call it. A hub that will focus on workforce development. Later on, could offer classes. And this is the type of things that feed into an ecosystem to make our city stronger. So there's a lot of things that I could say. I'm very proud, but to name a few, the level of civic participation by younger generations in our politics is noticeable. Aside from the shiny projects which we all love to do, voter engagement from our voters, not only through voting but also participating in elections, through becoming candidates, and then the hiring of people from within the community. That's been a very powerful thing for me that I feel has made me really appreciate them for answering the call of service. And the rest we can talk about, but those are the smaller things that I think are for me a big, proud moment, shining moment in my 8 years as mayor.
I remember, I think we talked about this in probably, it was 2019 when I was at your office at Central Falls City Hall. And I grew up in South County. I went to Charahoe and played soccer. And I can remember, the racism and xenophobia that took place, when we'd have a game against Central Falls, and, you'd have some gym teacher or coach or something saying, oh, you guys got to make sure you hang on to your bags or stick together, all this kind of nonsense. And it really impacted me also because at the time I was also refereeing soccer. And so I was spending a lot of time in Central Falls, and I knew this to be, just total nonsense. But I feel like optically, this sort of that perception of Central Falls as some kind of dangerous place that you're going to walk into, that you've done a great deal to change that image. And that means so much for the city and for the state as a whole.
Well, we knew that that there were a lot of factors as to why people felt like that about Central Falls. And so it was important for me to build the pride within the city, because if people are proud of their city, they're going to go out, speak about it, really illuminate conversations about the good things that are happening in Central Falls. And that was a priority for me too. Every time I went out and spoke, I said, to the residents, I would say, look, there's a lot of good things happening. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And once we built up that pride, the next step was inviting people in. We did salsa nights, restaurant week, these types of events that we knew that people would come in and try to see what's going on in Central Falls and have a lot of positive publicity around things that were going on in the city, and being very intentional with social media. I think helped engage the population from outside, and that's truly helped change the dynamics. I really mean it, changed it, because I would be at events and there'd be a person from down in the southern part of the state saying, "Hey, look, this is the first time I come to Central Falls. There's so much buzz happening. I want to check it out." And it's only going to continue to grow, because now that this train station is moving right along, I think you're going to see much more activity happening with the soccer stadium right over the line in Pawtucket, which I'm really, really excited about. This is going to be a region of Rhode Island that I think is going to be talked about for many decades to come, because of so much happening in the coming years. And I'm excited about it, truly am. And I love partnering up with my fellow mayors, whether it's the Mayor of Cumberland, Pawtucket, Lincoln, North Providence. We all had a very, very good relationship and a very good understanding that what's good for North Providence is good for Central Falls, and vice versa with Pawtucket. And so we were very open-minded to projects, to having discussions, and having that open line between us to support each other.
From Mario Hilario to Sheldon Whitehouse, from the issues of the day to the big picture questions facing the ocean state. Discover hundreds of episodes of Rhode Island's podcast of record, B-Town, wherever you're listening right now. Yeah, that Northern Rhode Island mayoral peer group, which, again, going back to Lieutenant Governor McKee, you think about the trips to Southeast Asia and obviously Tidewater Landing, attracting the soccer club and beyond. And it's sort of like, all right, this is a group that respects their community. They want to develop their community, but sort of in an atypical fashion for Rhode Islanders, celebrating the rest of the world, the global reality, and trying to engage the region on a global scale. And that's something that I think is a model for probably other parts of the state. And it's something that your peer group, so to speak, has done well. I guess the flip side of that is, you have the new train station, you have Tidewater, which we'll get there no matter what. It does seem like they're moving forward. Brett Johnson, the whole crew, they're moving forward on that. But what happens when it becomes too attractive, that you start to see folks moving into the area and potentially getting into that gentrification conversation, people being pushed out? Is that something that you're concerned about? Because that's a natural thing to happen in Central Falls, Pawtucket. That's ripe for this sort of trajectory.
Mm-hmm. We definitely, I think it was about 2 years ago, we applied for a grant that allowed us to bring in a group of people to help us look at that exact question about how do we make sure people from Central Falls don't get pushed out. And one of the things that was very prevalent in every conversation during those meetings was there's a need to continue pushing through the state, through the city, through accessing dollars from the federal government to create more affordable housing opportunities. That's the way you balance things out, because you can't control every aspect of what a train station development can do, or the soccer stadium and all that, but you can be very intentional about, if you knocked on a house, you can build an affordable house. That is just there for the purposes of providing families who can't afford expensive rents the ability to live in a beautiful brand new house. So we've been doing that. Every time we knock on a house, we try to work with our partners to build a house that's specific to those terms. We've been very intentional about creating more owner-occupied housing, which is very critical too. We know that if someone lives in their home, it's less likely that they'll move around or not maintain their property, helps build a community up, etc. So yes, we definitely know that is a conversation that not only did I have it, but the mayor there now is having as well. And I think that if we continue to be very intentional supporting the bonds that the state's coming out for more affordable housing, I think we can continue providing these opportunities in the Blackstone Valley for families.
Let's shift to COVID, because there's no doubt about it. COVID had a unique impact in Central Falls. We saw the private sector in many cases stepping up in terms of testing and opportunities, but Central Falls stuck out in a lot of ways. Obviously, geographically, there's challenges there. Frankly, demographically, there's challenges in terms of transportation to testing, translation services, things like that, especially at the beginning of the crisis here in Rhode Island. What was it like navigating COVID as the mayor of Central Falls, as the mayor of the municipality that was seeing the most severe impact?
I tell you that 4 years ago, I made the best decision. One of the best decisions as mayor, and that was to create an office on health at City Hall. And in that office, we were able to bring on a superstar, and Dr. Michael Fine, who was the former medical director for the state. And throughout these 4 years that he lived in that office and continues to do the work, I've been able to learn more about how important policy and health make a difference. And everything that I looked at from my desk, I now had a voice that gave me the health perspective and the benefits and the cons, and et cetera. So during these 4 years, we focused on opiate abuse, alcohol abuse, some of the underlying health conditions that impact people in Central Falls, obesity, cholesterol, diabetes. And it was fascinating to learn all that and try to look for solutions to address some of these concerns. And then the pandemic hit, and Dr. Fine immediately took the reins because of his, obviously being a doctor, but also his experience with prepping the state up for Ebola when we had that concern a few years ago. And he's led a tremendous role in helping me stay on top of the information, understand the information, how to get the information out there, what information needs to get out there. And he was the engineer that put together the Beat COVID hotline between Central Falls and Pawtucket that gave us even more access to provide people with a hotline of information, not only to testing, but what do you do if you're positive? Do you need resources? How do we connect you there? This hotline was truly a model for many in the state. And we had to work very closely with Dr. Alexander Scott and the governor, and making sure that they understood what we were confronting, and that we needed more access to testing, that we needed places for our families to go isolate, because as we know, our demographics clearly show that our families not only cannot work from home because their jobs were in service line industries, and they couldn't miss work, or they were afraid to miss work because they would get fired, but they also lived with extended families and households, because that's unfortunately, some of our folks don't make a lot of money, and so they can't live on their own, giving the close quarters the ability for this virus to spread rapidly. And our kids suffer too, because many of our families who migrate from Central South America, the Caribbean, don't know English well. They probably didn't achieve a higher level of education. So this virtual learning has created some impact too, which I know that our superintendent and our commissioner have been working very aggressively of how to stay on top of our families so that we can make sure that there are no gaps in learning happening in Central Falls. But it was a scary time. When we first learned of the first case, we were like, okay. And then all of a sudden our numbers kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And we were just like, what do we need to do? So we started getting creative. We had our cruisers go out with the sirens, and the PA system went on with a message. We had people doing phone calls. We had robocalls, social media, to the point where we were able to bring on health ambassadors who go out every day to pass out masks and information about COVID. And now to the point where we handed it off to the next administration with a vaccine in place. So we're knock on wood. It's been a long learning process, but I think we're finally turning the corner now that we have the vaccine in place.
Do you feel like the media treated Central Falls fairly and highlighted the specific challenges? And that term, the media, is just one of the worst broad terms that it's just kind of come up in the last 4 years, the media. But by and large, do you think Rhode Islanders as a whole understood the specific challenges that you were facing?
Well, look, I always said that Central Falls is a microcosm of what happens not only in many places around the state, but around the country. And, you had this big article, I believe it was in the New York Times, that compared us to Chelsea, Massachusetts. And same type of demographics, same situation, exact turnout of what this virus was doing to both of our communities. I think the media did its best in covering what was unraveling in Central Falls. And we had to be very clear too about what we were experiencing and what were the needs and what we were seeing from the ground. And we did our best to keep the media informed and work hand in hand, never turn them away, because we needed them to help us get out the message, but also help tell us the realities of why Central Falls has been impacted the way that it has. And in broader sense, these are some of the things that we need to address as a state and as a country. Access to the healthcare, access to better paying jobs, more affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera.
Kind of looking forward now, I guess. Obviously, who knows what's going to happen. You may be the next lieutenant governor of the state of Rhode Island. You might enter the private sector, whatever the case is. What do you want to do? I know you mentioned you're starting a foundation, but what do you want to do to keep your legacy moving? Obviously, the people who are in positions of authority now, whether you're talking police chief, mayor, state senator, there are some characters that are going to embody a lot of the work that you've done. But even, I think we're the same age. Are you 36?
Yeah, I'll be 36 in August.
Okay, yeah. So we're basically at the same age. So let's hope we have at least triple our lifetimes ahead of us here.
Knock on wood.
What do you look to? How do you want to preserve your legacy, I guess, going forward?
I think for me, the way to preserve my legacy is to continue to support younger generations. Yeah. That to me is the way that I not only pass on my success, but also stay very focused and disciplined about leaving the ladder out for others to climb. And that's why I decided to create this foundation, because I needed to share my experience. And also growing up in Central Falls, from a family who migrated from Colombia, I understood my odds in being successful. And now that I've been able to have or experience some success, that I want to share everything I know to other generations that are coming up living in Central Falls. And not only to get involved in politics, whether working for someone or running for office, but ensuring that everything that I've been exposed to through this office, that I want to be able to share it, so that there's not only inspiration, but motivation to understand that you could do whatever you want. And as long as you're focused and engaged, you can do it.
James Diossa, the most recent outgoing mayor of Central Falls, and who knows what comes next at this point.
Yeah, we'll see.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.